One of the things we've always been trying to get across to people, even now, is that we now have a legacy of 14 years of a previous, Tory government, let's say who it is, not investing in infrastructure. And infrastructure is more than the road, rails, airports, railway stations, it's sewers, schools, the electricity grid, all that stuff. And bear in mind, we are seeing Labour actually tackle that. We're seeing, Ed Miliband do that, set up the energy superhighway that's being set up. That is going to be a very critical piece of infrastructure. But we're not talking about that today. We are actually talking about roads, if not probably one of the most infamous roads in the entire country. The infamous now Snake Way, or Snake Pass, as it's really called, Snake Way. I'm Dragon Ball Zing it there. But anyway, Snake Pass. I have been over that pass, I don't know how many times in my many years of going to Manchester Airport, and I wouldn't be too surprised if you live on this side of the Pennines, the right side of the Pennines. You too have used that pass at some point. It is incredibly busy, but as you know, during winter it closes because of snow. There are other reasons it closes as well, but now, because of a lack of infrastructure and, of course, a huge, should we say, resistance by, should we say, a certain unnamed party. I'm sure you can all guess which one I'm referring to. Has stopped a potential tunnel development, which would have been fantastic. We are now in a situation where this route, one of the most busiest potentially between two of the UK's largest cities, Sheffield and Manchester, is now in doubt because the local county council can't keep on funding the repair money to do it. It needs potential government intervention, or there needs to be another solution brought up to find a way to fix this. Otherwise, this road just closes permanently. And that, I can tell you now, is going to cause huge congestion problems around here and around the rest of the country. Massive problems. But anyway, let's get on to talking about this because I think it's well worth talking about. So before we continue talking about this, please do remember to click on the like, share, the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. I'm sure many of you have used this route in the past. And of course, I know there are many stories about it as well. Everyone has a story, a Snake Pass story. That's for sure. But yes, leave a comment down below about your Snake Pass story. But of course, down below, there's the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link, there's the YouTube thank you button, and of course, there's the Pony Club as well. So let's crack on then into this, coming from the Sheffield Star, of all places. I say of all places. It's a good newspaper for stuff in Sheffield. So, one of the highest roads in the UK, Snake Pass, now poses a persistent logistical and resource headache for Derbyshire County Council. This isolated, weather-hit road is now constantly moving and has been built, of course, on historic shale landslip deposits. It is often very much the first route and the last run to reopen each winter due to bouts of snow on the higher reaches of the peaks, with very laborious diversions then requiring now for the very vital thoroughfare between of the UK's largest major cities, used by over 30,000 vehicles a week. On a visit to the route this week, Julian Gollard, the council's highway director, and Councillor Clark Clippin, member of the Highways Assets and Transport, outlined the challenges the authority faces what it's aiming to now do with very much constrained resources. They detail that the route is now in a constant state of slipping, with interventions now needed more frequently than ever, not down to 6 to 12 months from a previous gap of 8 years due to now increasing bouts of heavy rain caused by climate change. So as you can see, once again, climate change having an impact here. With the county council now constrained by the highways capital budget of £72 million a year, which needs now to cover the whole country, Snake Pass solutions are not able to be effectively and even permanent as they would prefer. There are currently 2 sets of temporary traffic lights on this 12-mile Snake Road section of the route at Gillett Hay and Airport, with the significant damage now both sides, particularly at Airport, with further damage at Wood Cottage. Driving along the Wood Cottage section of the route now mimics an extended series of speed bumps, with the road limit now limited to 30 miles per hour due to now widespread ripping. A 7.5-ton weight restriction does remain in place on the route to try and reduce the strain on the slipping surface, with no imminent end in sight for that restrictions until at least major improvements can be made. Snake Pass will obviously have to be very temporarily closed again from October the 14th to 25th of December for the surface repairs during those landslip sections. This will involve now raised sections of the road having to be being even trimmed off and a new layer now added. The tentative bids do now avoid even more weight added to the under pressure route. Councillor Cuppet and Goddard are now clear that these are now stopgap repairs for what is really needed for the current slips. But all the council now is able to fund with its own budget is as these battles now to consider. Lobbying requests have also been made to the central government and the new East Midlands Mayor now for the potential landslip fund, with Councillor Culprit saying that there is nearly a very unique problem in the Derbyshire region, with the council facing at least over 200 slips across the country. There are now particularly these are 3 particularly problematic ones. A long-term slip for the Airport landslip alone would cost hundreds of millions of pounds, where the council would never be able to fund it and will at least hinge on government intervention. But it gets even worse because this would potentially keep the route open, but of course, for the possibilities of a cataclysmic landslip, which would be near impossible to even fund or fix, and that could be never ruled out. So, if this happens, like on a cataclysmic scale, the council can't fund it. It was going to require government intervention. Meanwhile, of course, a pie-in-the-sky 12 billion conceptual plan for the 25-mile Trans-Pennine Tunnel, initially mooted back in 2016 by the Sheffield City Mayor, has not been forthcoming. Mr. Gould said, not knowing the specific details of the Trans-Pennine Tunnel, I am sure that if it was carried out properly, it would give at least some benefits, but I'm not sure it would negate the need for the cross-Pennine route, but it would need to look at least in a bit more detail. It is not something that we've particularly considered because it is not something with immediately now available to us, but anything that gives relief to this route would be very welcomed. So Mr. Goldsall said the period between these interventions is now less and less. It will not be sustainable long term without significant investment, but county councils cannot fund this level of intervention. He said if the interventions were needed every few weeks instead of nearly annually, the council will need to change tack significantly, but this has not reached that point yet. A relatively minor but a more long-term fix would be to strengthen the land with long steel piles, but that would cost up to £4 million, he says. But he and the council would never be able to predict when the big movements are going to happen. And of course, they talk about the big cataclysmic stuff. So this is something that does need to be addressed. And on a route like this, something like the Trans-Pennine Tunnel, which again talked about back in 2016, not really happen, but £12 million, again, I think it should happen because it would take pressure. Certainly would take all the lorries off that route, off that road, that's for sure. And of course, any other loads potentially, instead of having to navigate round, would then be able to just come through the tunnel. So definitely something that could be used. And you could also help fund it by a toll, put a toll booth in front of it. What was the whole one for quite a while? 50p, something like that. And I think it was like a decade or so it was up before they paid for it. Again, something like that I think would be really valuable. But this is sort of the legacy, and that's partly reason why I wanted to talk about it today, was because this is the legacy that the current government has been left with. Such a problem that has been going on under them, never addressed it, They talked about them constantly, never did anything with it. There was a tunnel plan that's saying, hey, part of the reason why that tunnel was mooted back in 2016 was for the reason, or at least the hope, that maybe at that point, um, they might do something with it. There was obviously talks about HS2 maybe doing something through there as well. Maybe they can do something simultaneously. We don't know, but again, it's something that needs doing, something that needs seeing to. And this is the legacy that the current government has been left with. But if something cataclysmic happens, that's gone, because the council can't afford to repair that by themselves. That's going to take major intervention and going to take some substantial time to be able to reopen. So yeah, maybe Snake Pass is just a ticking clock for how long it remains open. But for the fact that interventions have now become once every couple of years, to now we have to go back every 8 to 12 months, significant problems indeed. So let me know what you think down below, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.